Hello, everyone. Welcome to the semi-weekly Tablas Creek Instagram live broadcast. I'm Jason Haas, as always. My guest this time is going to be Caren MacNamera, who is doing, I think, some of the most interesting sustainability work in the world of wine, trying to tackle the challenge of how do you make a circular economy around glass bottles. And glass bottles are roughly half of the average California winery's carbon footprint, all told. And that would be dramatically reduced if one could use them multiple times rather than just once. So I'm going to be asking Caren to join in just a couple of minutes. But while we're waiting for everyone to sign on, let me, as usual, share some pictures as to what we are working on at the vineyard. So we finally have some beautiful sunny weather. I feel like it has been cold nonstop for 4 months. And it's not just my impression. I'm working on a blog looking back at the winter this week. We have literally had 3 days since the beginning of December where it's hit 70 and 82 where it hasn't made it out of the 50s. It's been cold in California this year. But with all of the sun, we're seeing great cover crop growth. I almost lost my dog in the cover crop as we were walking around this morning. We are still seeing water draining out of all of the hillsides. So I like this photo. This is looking at the bottom of, in between two of our blocks, a head-trained Counoise block on the left, and then a hillside block of Syrah Grenache on the right. This was a farm road until last year. I think at this point we're leaning towards restoring it as a creek. But right now there's just water flowing downhill, even though we haven't gotten much rain in a couple weeks. With the sun starts to come the risk of frost. We haven't seen anything significant in terms of bud break yet. It's just feels like the very first little bits starting. So this is the time to make sure that we're ready to go. We got a couple of mobile fans. This is winemaker Neil Collins there, getting this particular fan in the low Counoise block set up this morning. So that's where our focus is going to turn over the next few weeks in the vineyard. In terms of bud break, let me show you what we've got so far. So if you look at a grape like Mourvedre, still looks totally dormant. This is no different than it would have looked in January. Syrah, almost the same. You can see the buds are starting to swell a little bit, but they haven't broken. Really, the only varieties that we've seen any actual bud break on is Grenache. And even then, it's so early and so scattered. I mean, I walked around for about 45 minutes this morning. This is the one bud with some actual leaves that you can see that I found. It's the top of one of our Grenache blocks. So we're still at least 3 weeks behind normal. It may end up being more than that when we get a chance to see how everything goes through. But it's coming. And that's great. Having the shorter frost season will be a wonderful thing. Okay. In the cellar, we have been working on bottling. We've bottled some of our estate reds from 2021, like Mourvedre, Tannat, Angoublé, and these are Terre Noir. These are going to be coming out. Look for your emails over the next couple of months. And then we are about to dive into blending. We'll have the parents here in 2 weeks, and we will get to take a look at the 2021 reds. If you're interested in how the first set of blending went, that was the subject of my blog last week. I was looking at the blending of the 2021 whites, where it looks like quality was high, but quantity was really painfully low. Hopefully, with all of this rain, things will look better this year. Okay, I am going to invite Caren to join. But I cannot wait to talk to her because this is one of the most important sustainability challenges that wine faces right now.
Hello, Jason.
Hello, Caren.
I am well.
How are
Yourself?
you? I'm doing well.
So
Where you're joining from.
Joining from Charles Krug Winery in St. Helena because I'm attending the Napa Rise event here. Jancis Robinson just spoke, and she was actually talking a lot about packaging. So it was a lot to share there.
I'll be up there next week for
Yeah,
the next one of the Napa Rise
yeah.
sessions,
As
talking
will
about
I. So
packaging
I'll see.
itself.
I'll see you next week for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so I like to start by inviting people to sort of share how they ended up in the world of wine. What was your path to getting where you are here now?
I'll keep it short. Um, when I grew up, I always lived in a sustainable home. My mother always had a garden. She and eventually was a master gardener at one point. But how I ended up here, I had worked in corporate America for years, and I had traveled a bit around the world, and I had seen returnable systems. You know, eh, South America, Central America, Europe, and I thought, boy, that's really smart, right? For a variety of reasons. And so as my career in the corporate world ended, and that was a good thing, my kids were off the payroll, and really, where did I want to go? I said, we need to bring this refillable program back to the United States. And I said, what can I do about it? And so I went from, corporate America into completely upskilling myself into what is a refillable program look like? How do we bring it here? And started on the beer side, looked a little at wine, and really I have been working on this over the past 5 years. Been a very interesting journey. And we've pivoted to wine over the past couple of years because wine is really committed to glass as a packaging format. I mean, there's a lot of other options and they definitely have their place. When I looked at the wine industry even further, I said, this is the right place for us to launch this refillable program. And I love wine. I mean, I grew up just over the hill in Vacaville, and I come from a very agricultural background. So this is the right place and the right time. So it's been a very interesting journey, but I really took time to upskill myself as I went through that process.
Cool. So maybe a good way to start would be sort of laying out the scope of the problem. I think sometimes people look at glass and think of that as being like compared to plastic or compared to metal. Like it feels like probably a good container packaging material, but it has real issues to it. So do you want to lay out why people should be aware of basically what they should be aware of when they're seeing a glass package?
Glass is, from the research that I have done, is the best package to put your beverage in. And it it's the most recyclable. I know there's a lot of dialogue about recyclability, but the glass package, it's an inert material, and it's the it holds that beverage in particular, or that food product. It's the best container. There's no leaching inside of a can that's lined with plastic. If you have plastic, that's plastic. Plastics is a real challenge. Glass is really the most infinitely recyclable product out there in regards to packaging. Recycling is its own category in regards to how good is your recycling system. That depends what country and what region, even what city you are in, right? But the glass package, when folks really understand the different packaging options and the environmental impact, glasses is really our best package. There's the weight issue in the wine industry. We just had a long conversation about that internally here. There's the weight challenge, and this is where the conversation about single use versus returnable and even lightweighting is very good, but it's still a single use package, right? It still is single
Right.
use. And what's the process by which to bring that back into our recycling system? And this is where, when you talk about a returnable glass bottle, when you look at these systems around the world, Jason, these there's also returnable PET bottles. We spoke about glass, but returnable PET is also quite prevalent around the world. Is It has a lower cost long term, the CO2 footprint, when you compare a single-use glass bottle to a refillable glass bottle in a mature system, 95% lower carbon footprint. Now that's a mature system, fair enough, but that number, and it's a lower carbon emission than aluminum and PET also, single use. So the glass package, there's a lot of energy and carbon emissions used when they create in the furnaces that run the, if anybody has had the opportunity to go see how glass is manufactured, it's pretty amazing. It's like molten lava, you know, dropping into blobs. But we need to reuse that package because it just takes so much energy to create it. It is, we are working right now to design industry standard refillable bottles, and I can talk a little more about that. But the glass container, when you really understand the packaging compared to our two other main standards, I mean, there's Tetra Pak and there's some others out there for different kinds of products, but it is the best package in particular to put a beverage in.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think people understand that. People understand that glass is inert, and it is infinitely recyclable in the sense that it can be melted down and reused with no loss of integrity or quality. But I think people maybe don't realize that most of the glass that gets entered into the recycling stream in the United States doesn't actually get recycled. The research that I did a year ago for this, like I was horrified. Like the glass recycling rate in the United States is 31%. And a lot of that, it counts as recycling, if it gets crushed up and used as road base. It's not actually melted down to make new glass. So this is why I think what you're doing is so exciting, is that it's actually taking this package that has such wonderful characteristics to hold the liquid, particularly with wine, which is designed to age for decades if necessary, and figuring out some way to tackle the challenge that right now glass accounts for something like half of the carbon footprint of the average California winery.
Yeah, this is a really multifaceted challenge to bring a returnable glass container into a linear marketplace, right? And so how these are the pieces that what I have been doing and the Conscious Container team are working on is we're tackling each one of those multifaceted challenges while trying to bring a startup business into the marketplace. So there's sort of these two really challenging obstacles. But all I can say about this whole journey is that everyone that I talk to, and in particular in the wine industry, they want this refillable option, right? And we can do it. And with the concentration of the wine industry here in Northern California in particular, this is going to happen. And a refillable bottle, it just makes so much sense to be bringing this kind of package.
Yeah, totally. Completely. It makes a ton of sense. But the challenges are real. I mean, this is not a trivial thing to do. You have to get the bottles back to where they can be filled again. Obviously, the end destination of most wine bottles is not a winery. It's somebody's house somewhere around the country, which may or may not be in wine country. You've got to figure out how to then clean off whatever is on the outside of the bottle, whether that's labels, whether that's capsules, whether that's screw caps. You've got to then figure out how to wash it and sterilize it, sort it among things of like sizes. There's a lot of hard things that you're working on here. Are there other challenges that I didn't mention, or
there's a whole lot there? So what we've done is there's the consumer side of a returnable bottle. Let's put that over on one side. The way we've launched this business is you want to start with the low-hanging fruit, no pun intended. So what we've started with is a B2B strategy for returnable bottles. So in California alone, the wine industry packages 3 billion glass bottles annually, 3 billion. And out of that, there's 1.5% wastage. That's at least 45 million bottles that go into, hopefully, as you talked about, recycling. Yes, there's only about 30% of glass that's recycled across the United States. So what we're doing is we're looking at that excess, and out of that excess, what we're literally doing is we are bringing those excess bottles in, and labels are a big challenge, right? We have to be able to take labels off. So we've started with is a B2B strategy. We get that excess glass either off production lines or through the recycling system. Literally pallets and pallets and pallets of glass come into Napa Recycling, as an example. So we triaged and look for the glass that we know, particularly the small wineries want. So what we're doing is we're starting with a straight B2B strategy, that we get the excess glass, we wash that glass, and we resell that glass, primarily to small wineries, right? In lots of 200 or less right now. We want to get up, a lot of the demand is like 500, okay, 700 cases is what a lot of the wineries are looking for. So what we want to do is start the wheel turning from a B2B perspective. And this is absolutely doable, and we're doing it here in the Napa Sonoma area to start with, because I know you and I have talked about this. Paso Robles is a little bit further away, but we'll get there. So starting with the B2B strategy allows us to get the infrastructure in place, because what Conscious Container does is we bring the bottles in, we wash them, and then we resell them. There's also wineries who have excess bottles, and they say, hey, I've got 10,000 cases. We got this call. We don't want to put this into recycling. We want you to wash those bottles and return them to them. It's called contract washing. And then there's other options where folks just reach out to us and say, hey, we've got these excess bottles. If the volume is long enough and it's the right type of bottles, because we're primarily right now looking at corked bottles, not Stelvin at first. So there's these different channels. And then we had, I will tell you, Tahoe Blue called us and said, we have 12,000 cases. We've changed our bottle mold, and these cases are perfectly new, sitting in a warehouse. We don't want to send them to recycling because they've got to pay for somebody to pick them up. Can you broker these bottles for us? Can you sell these bottles for us? And so,
and I would guess that people were pretty excited about that. That is the low hanging fruit. Now we see that even on
right,
message boards and bulletin boards around here. It's like, hey, I got extra 300 cases of this kind of glass if you want it. That's one piece of it. What's the next stage?
I've been working so hard on finding a glass manufacturer to work with us to design an industry standard suite of wine bottles, to really commit to it. And I have finally, Jason, found a glass manufacturer that's going to do that. So more to come on that. But everybody says we need to reduce the number of SKUs we have for glass. First of all, we need to lightweight our glass, secondly, and then working with a glass manufacturer, finally, it's about how do we design an industry standard suite of bottles like I talked about, but what is the right number of turns we design that bottle for? What are the styles, right? 80% of the market probably uses, 6 different molds. There's different colors and such. So that just happened recently, and that is huge news, because that's where, and we probably won't get that glass into the marketplace for a year and a half, 2, because you got to create the mold and then, and then produce it and then get the glass in the marketplace. But that is a significant commitment that's moving forward that we are going to be a part of and driving. So for moving into that space, that's going to be one of the next steps. But the other really exciting next step is we are working with several major brands here in the Napa Sonoma area on refillable tasting room programs. So we're working with existing bottles, and they carefully choose which brands based, they're not going to go much below 500 grams on the bottles that they're doing. They're putting wash off labels, and I'll talk about that in just a sec. And keep me time checked, please. So working with this is where, to your point, this is where we start to have the wineries engage with their consumers, right? Here's a refillable tasting room program. You launch it. We use existing glass. We work with the brand to get them into wash off labels, and we begin to bring that to the consumer. And the wash off labels we can talk about a little bit, but the last thing I want to say is that the state of California, we have worked successfully on legislation that a refillable bottle in our redemption system can be separated by the recycler and not crushed, because right now everything has to be crushed. We've been successful there. Number two, wine and spirits are coming into our redemption system, right? Starting in 2024. In fact, that's what I'm going to talk about next week here at Napa Rise, as well as our
Right.
program. But the state of California, with SB 1013, has also committed $900 million to our recycling infrastructure. That's starting, that monies are going to start to be released next quarter. Could be a little later with Cal Recycle, but what that says, to your point, is that we're, as consumers, there's going to be more opportunities for that wine bottle that folks are going to be paying a deposit on, as well as spirit. There's going to be more avenues for them to begin to return those bottles. So that's coming into place. And the state of California also has $25 million that they're going to be putting into a grant for refillable infrastructure. And that comes from the work that Conscious Container has done. They realize that refillables are part of the solution to reduce waste. That's primarily Cal Recycle's, one of their mandates, I should say. So what we're doing is starting with a B2B solution. Existing glass doesn't have labels. There is a lot of quantity and opportunity. The second piece is working on these refillable programs with wineries to begin to bring it out to the consumer side. And that's just a real contract wash. The glass goes over to the side in the tasting room. They're going to do some wine club programs. And then we pick up that glass, wash it, and it goes back to that producer. And the one thing, I'll say one more thing, is that industrial glass bottle washing is around the world. The technology is there. That glass literally comes out cleaner than new. I would tell you, it's a machine that has a caustic soap. That's where the labels come off. It turns around, does multiple rinses. The equipment that is today, or in the past 5 years, they're very efficient with water, because I know I'm a native of Northern California. Water is gold. It's not the stuff that's in the ground, it's the water. So we're very cognizant of the water, and we have to be very conserve. We have to conserve water and make sure that we're going to be putting sustainable practices in place. Conscious Container is a benefit corporation. This is about how we collectively work together, and there's so much more, but I'm going to stop there, Jason.
So there's a ton to unpack there. I have a couple questions from earlier in that little piece. So do you know how many different molds there are available for sale, for wine bottles in California?
I've never been asked that question, but I think some wineries must have 25, 30. I've gone to one large winery and with the procurement people, and there was a whole huge shelf of all the different bottles that they had. I don't know. Must be 50, easy. Okay.
I would guess it's
maybe
10 times that number, honestly, between the different different companies and the different weights and the different size, not even different sizes, but companies and weights and
it's crazy.
And shapes. I know we did when we were looking to lightweight our bottles, it was now a dozen years ago. We asked just one of our the main bottle broker who we use. It's like, okay, we would like lightweight burgundy mold bottles under this weight, and I think we got 40 examples of that made by different manufacturers, and that's one shape type, and that has to be as you move from the B2B and the sort of winery to winery pieces to something which is a broader collection of bottles from different places. I love hearing that you now have a manufacturer who is working on a uniform bottle that will be shared among wineries. Do you have wineries signed up at this point to participate once those exist?
Everybody that I talk to, I don't have any written contracts in place, but yes, there's wineries who can't wait for us to bring this to market. And one thing I want to mention is, as we're going through this process, which is happening right now, is we want to bring wineries in as what, Conscious Container in our experience, the glass manufacturer, we want to bring our, what I call my champion wineries into this collective conversation. What are the right molds? What styles do we want to focus on first? Do we look at a regional program, a regional bottle? And because this is what's happening in France right now and Germany, where they have a
Right.
regional bottle and they just kind of circulate, that particular bottle. So yeah, every winery that has reached out to us is very interested in, they're already, many of them, reducing the number of SKUs they have to begin with. And there is a lot of excitement regionally about industry standard, how that will roll out. Our goal is that we need as many people participating in this as possible, because we have to begin to drive the volume to make it a viable business for all of us. But yeah,
Absolutely.
I've got a whole list of wineries that are very, very interested, and champions that we had 2 wineries bottle with our bottles just recently.
And I know I signed on when we talked last year. There was a thing on your website, sign on, saying basically, yes, I'm interested in this. Please, like get me involved as the capacity
Yes,
is there. Is that still something
absolutely.
that other wineries can do?
Out on consciouscontainer.com, what we have is you can set up like a 15-minute meeting. You just sign up, and that's where we start to have the conversation, where wineries reach out to us. So that's the best way to do that, to find out what we're doing. We have bottles for sale out there. We are in the process right now of moving. We were up in Cloverdale with Bear Republic, and they're closing down their operations, unfortunately. So we are actually out now we're moving to a new location. We've got something possible, but we're in a move right now. So a little bit of a pause.
Are there other countries that are doing this well
around the world? So would you want to talk about wineries or just generally? What would you like? What do you think?
Well,
okay.
Yeah, I think maybe both. If this exists in the world of wine elsewhere, I think that'd be really interesting. But if not, I'd love to have you talk a little bit about the models that you're looking at outside.
So Conscious Container is, first of all, starting in wine, but we're bottle agnostic, Jason. I want to wash a beer bottle. I want to wash a Coke bottle, a 12 ounce. I want 500 ml bottles coming through, and I want 750 ml. So our business model is bottle agnostic. We're starting in the wine industry for a variety of reasons, but the systems that exist around the world, I have conversations with Coca-Cola Innovations, and we did a pilot or an accelerator program with Anheuser-Busch. There's Germany, there's all, almost all the beer is sold in returnable bottles. And the Germany's probably the most advanced. But what all of these returnable systems, number one, that exist around the world because there's gross margin. When you turn a bottle multiple times, the cost can go down up to 80%. And this is not a statistic from the wine industry, it's a statistic from the soda industry. So these systems exist because of gross margin. That's why they've never gone away. Now they're very sustainable, and now it's an ESG scope 3 emissions. I mean, to me, that's the cherry on the cake for why we want to move into this packaging platform. But I can tell you, Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch, they want this system. They want them to be here in the United States. One example, and I just talked to a bottle washing company that sold 5 industrial bottle washing machines, very small. They can start at 2,000 bottles per hour, and they can go up to 120,000 bottles per hour. But these were small machines. 5 of them were sold in France because they are starting a system. And I just got the information on who these producers are. OE is one of the wineries in France. So I am right now trying to understand who and what and how they are doing this. But that we're going to see this take off in France. It already is happening, and now more at scale. So yes, it's happening all around the world. Central and South America are also very big, in particularly in soda. I mean, if you ever go down to Cabo, right, your Corona beer is, they won't let.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember that I mean, I spent a fall in Mexico in between college and grad school, and one of the things, I mean, you would never think of throwing out a soda bottle, and you wouldn't recycle it either. I mean, there are collection points where you put the bottles in and they get taken back, and you know that the bottle that you have gotten full of something has been used a bunch of times, and like that, people think of that in America. They usually say, "Oh, that's like the old like milkman model." Um, why why did America get away from that model in the first place?
Um, it was so refillables were prevalent after World War II around the world, including here in the United States. I'm going to make the story short here. Beer and soda were the primary refillable systems. There was a depletion of and a consolidation of operations across both the soda and the beer industry. And with that consolidation, they were still doing refillables, but hauling them too far. So, quite frankly, they came up with a strategy to sell recycling and convenience to Americans starting in about the 50s. That trend moved us out of refillable containers into single use containers. It was a marketing strategy to reduce costs for those large beverage producers in the beer and soda, in short. And so they said recycling is the answer. We took off America, the what is it? Keep America Beautiful. There's some backstories. I think NPR did a great story about the backstory on maybe not so truthful work. And so there was just this transition, right? Convenience, throwaway, oh, recycling will take care of it. And the producers loved it. And it's just,
Right.
it's business, right? It was just business. So there are still dairy producers, Strauss being one of them here in Northern California, that is
Right.
still a closed loop system. And and you know, but I can tell you. So I said one last comment. The reuse category of business is moving very quickly and very fast, and there's a lot of momentum. You've got cups and plates and on the go and events. That whole category is expanding and exploding. The beverage side is not yet, because as you pointed out early, this is a really tough system to put in place. But the whole idea of reuse and reusability as much as we possibly can. I mean, we're part of the U.S. Plastics Pact. We were brought in for that, for reusability. We're part of Upstream. We have an inside seat, with Coca-Cola and Blue Triton and others. This is coming for sure, and there's a lot of momentum. And it's just, how do you monetize it? How do you bring it into the marketplace?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it seems like, at least in the world of wine, like, I don't see how wineries reach any sort of meaningful climate goals without figuring out some way to create a circular system for glass bottles. I mean, if it accounts for half of the winery's carbon footprint, I think any winery who's
Yeah.
signed on to the International Wineries for Climate Action group or some sort of similar commitment based on the Paris Accords, like, you got to reduce your greenhouse gas by 50% in relatively short order. Um, and you're supposed to be at net zero by 2050. I mean, these sorts of systems are the
Yeah.
only ways in which that's possible with a
Right.
glass bottle. Recycling isn't going to do it. So I'm encouraged to hear that some of the big beverage companies are behind it on the beer and soda side, because they're obviously easier to wrangle in some ways than wineries are, because like there's many fewer of them and they're bigger. Um, and I know wineries are. I mean, I know wineries are focusing on this, but I feel like for a lot of them, it's just in the last couple of years that they've started to think about it critically.
Yeah. I have two perspectives on how we move this forward. Is the large corporates are not going to lead in this category. They want, and I work with them constantly, come and invest in this and help us to build this. It's a harder sell, because this is a really big CapEx proposal for them. And I truly believe that how we get this going is from the ground up, and we get it going in the wine industry, who to me is the right place to get this going. I want to see the wine industry lead the reuse revolution when it comes to beverage packaging. I talk to the corporates a lot, but where I get the most traction and where this is going to happen, I am pretty sure it's going to be in the wine industry. But as soon as we turn this on, Jason, when we get the infrastructure up and running, the industrial washer, which we are really working hard to raise the capital for right now. So if anybody's interested in chatting about that, always open. But once we turn this on, Jason, I can guarantee you, folks like Coca-Cola, the beer producers in glass, they are going to start to step into it. I can guarantee you. It is a build it and they will come. It's just getting that first model off the ground. It's we're right there. And the wash off labels, we're working to enable that supply chain right now. I talk at length about that, but we're definitely getting some traction in that place. And what's really exciting right now, Jason, is we've got a glass manufacturer on board, and I think that that's a really critical path for the success of this model, where we start to consolidate down and we start to circulate a bottle. And what I will say is my goal with that is that the refillable bottle costs the same as that single-use bottle for the most part, right? And that so that when you're packaging with it, a lot of that bottle, D2C, right? It's going to go out into the community, but that's okay. We can't solve, we can't solve world hunger right now, but those bottles that stay within the region, by George, Conscious Container is part of the recycling system. We're a processor, so we can work with recycling centers to get that glass back. We're going to start to see the California Grocers Association start to bring more recycling options back for us as consumers. So as that wheel starts to turn, we can begin to capture more and more of that inventory that's going out into the marketplace, right? It's logical. The economics work out long-term for all of us, and the environmental benefits and the scope 3 emissions. This is the most impactful scope 3 emission right out the gate. Yep. And there's going to be, financial demands that says, hey, what are you doing about your scope 3 emissions? You can do something with a returnable bottle. And it doesn't take very many turns to make a big number, Absolutely. Put a big number out there.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. I could talk to you all afternoon about this. Perfect. I look forward to doing so in a week. But meanwhile, if people want to learn more or want to get involved, what's the best way for them to do that?
Take a look at our website, Conscious Container. I know the spelling, maybe someday we'll come up with an acronym, which we could CC, but consciouscontainer.com. You go out to our website. There's an info at Conscious Container. You can send us a note. You can always reach out to me. It's Caren, Caren, at consciouscontainer.com. Please do reach out to us and let us know you're interested and what you're interested in. You'll see that next week I'll be here at Napa Rise. I'm also doing you'll see us doing presentations about what we're doing, but please reach out because we want to know who's interested, what you're interested in regards to your production and your timing, because what that does is give us a sense of what are our customer base looking for as we go to build out our inventory of glass, because that's very important as we move along. But yeah, consciouscontainer.com.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you for taking a chunk out of the middle of your Wednesday to share all of this. I really am super excited for what this means for us as an industry and as a society. So thank you so much, Caren. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, everybody who joined. I'll be back in 2 weeks. My next guest is super exciting. It's Jess Lander, who's the new wine columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And Caren, I'll see you in 1 week.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.